What is going on, guys? How is everybody doing today? Today I have Megan with me today. How are you doing, Megan?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. So Monday's video we were... There's my dog. Trying to get Velociraptor at the door.
Hi, puppy.
Monday's video we're talking about all different kind of structural engineering and floor supporting. And that video, actually, the funny thing is I totally thought it was like not really that aquarium related, but tons of people loved it, tons of good comments. So I've been bugging Megan for ages to come do a stream with me, so she's finally here. So we'll get lots of good ones. In the chat, Derek, Jeff, Carlos, what is going on? Braveheart, Reefer, Desosopa, yo, how are you guys doing today? So a few questions that I see come back quite a bit is, do you need floor supporting? How big of a tank can you do without floor supporting? And I mean, you can't 100% say specific because every house is different, but there is some certain kind of general ones we can work off of for like averages and whatnot, right?
Yeah, and typical construction for what's kind of going on in your region.
Mm-hmm.
So like Devin's house is a classic 1970s cookie cutter box where it's just a bunch of floor joists and a bearing wall down the middle. So that was sort of easy to work with, but it still has a little bit of quirks that go on with it because we were scratching our heads for a little while. So the challenge with some of these older ones is they have a couple of renovations that have been done over time and things have changed and then you're not quite sure what's going on or what was originally going on.
So on mine, so one thing I learned today, there's actually different standards for the difference of joists in a house. So there's 12, 16, and 19.23.
19.2, that's the typical spacing, but they're all really designed to support the same loading. So that depends on the span that you're going with.
All right, so that's good to know. And the reason for all this is to utilize a full sheet of plywood. That's what else I just learned.
Yes.
All the wood efficiency when
a
you're
lot
building
of
a house.
a lot of wood products are based on inches, like 4 feet by 8 feet for a sheet of plywood. So you divide that by 3, 4, or 5, and you get those joist spacings.
Yep. All right, so safest place in general to put an aquarium in a house on a second floor is against a load-bearing wall, which can be external or interior wall, so that goes either way.
Yes.
And for the first ones, I mean, exterior is obviously load-bearing. Generally, in the middle of your house, if it's the older style house, is load-bearing.
Yeah, if you can find a load-bearing wall in the interior, the floor system on newer houses will have several load-bearing walls, potentially. A lot of them still utilize like a single load-bearing wall in the interior.
Okay.
And
is there any general way that someone would know something's a load-bearing wall without looking at plans?
for a really rough rule of thumb, there are a few telltale signs, like what your HVAC system is doing. If it has room to go in between the joists, then that's the direction that your joists are going. But if it has to drop underneath your joists and you have a bulkhead, then that's probably opposite to the direction of your joists.
So you brought up a very good point. If you have, because one of the first important things to know is figure out which way your joists are going.
Yes.
Because ideally, you want to put your tank somewhere where it's going to span multiple joists.
Yeah, you want it to span multiple joists, and you also want it to actually be close to load-bearing walls. Some of your exterior walls aren't necessarily going to be load-bearing, because if the joists are running parallel,
good point.
if their joists are running parallel, then the joists aren't sitting. Oh, I guess I got to use my hand motions up here. So here's your exterior wall, here's your joist, and if they're just kind of hanging out side by side, they're not going to interact with each other. So if you put your tank up against that wall, it's not much different than putting your tank in the middle of the floor, and then it's not being as supported, or it doesn't have those extra redundancies that we're going for.
So at least I know in my house, the furnace room is the one room that does not have a roof on it. So you can see which way the joists are. So you could either would your rafters in the attic be the same way as the joists, or would it be different?
That one is completely up in the air.
Okay.
And it also depends how old your house is, additions, and what shape your roof is doing. There's so many different things once you actually get up to the roof system that can be going on.
Okay. So first thing is, if you have a furnace room, the odds are you'll be able to see it that way.
On these older houses, yes.
Okay. And new ones, can your joists be multiple directions, or are they always generally the same?
They like to keep them in the same direction because, again, it goes back to that sheet of plywood. They like to just stick their plywood in the same way, and they don't want to have to, like, monkey around. Like, some go this way, some go this way, and they don't like messing around with that. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
Okay.
So the newer houses, anything goes, really.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so biggest thing. Ideally close to a load-bearing wall.
Yes.
And ideally running it across so it spans multiple joists. If you have one joist and you're in the middle of it, that's a lot of weight on it. Or if it hits a bunch of joists in a row, then you're going to be a lot more supported and you get away with a little more.
Yeah, so that depends on the style of fish tank. So you've got the fish tank that has the multiple feet, like we talked about in your video last week, or if it just has 4 feet that are further away, then it's a little bit more concentrated in different locations.
Okay, so that's another good question. So if we have the feet of a fish tank, so say like on my current tank, it's a steel stand with 4 corner posts. So all that weight is like there's a square on the bottom, but most of the weight is coming down those pegs in the corners.
Yeah, you take the total load. So we calculated a similar tank in the other video that was close to 2,000 pounds just for the water. And now it's on 4 feet. So that means one of those feet is 500 pounds.
Each on a 4-inch, couple inch square.
That's not very much squares to work with on the round.
No.
So.
Exactly. Okay, so you're saying, Reefaholic, my tank is on a second floor running perpendicular to the joists. Devin's putting 1,000 gallons upstairs. Not quite that big. This one's only
That's a lot of gallons.
170. How many pounds you can do? Okay, so salt water is 8.5 pounds a gallon, or 8.6, 8.5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, we looked that one up before.
So that's kind of your other one. You got larger tanks. You also got to consider the glass weight. So how thick your glass is could be a couple 100 pounds of glass easily on a big tank. You know, the wood or met steel for your stand, your sump. What I didn't consider was everything that goes inside.
And all of the other stuff that you could put underneath for storage. So you got all your chemicals and whatever testing equipment and just general storage that you can put in there. So it adds up.
It's better to overestimate and
for sure.
Always overkill it. That's my motto. You guys know that one. Always overkill. Okay. Someone was asking earlier too about putting a tank on engineered flooring, and especially if it has those little legs. Is there a chance that's going to break the flooring, or is engineered flooring usually fairly tough?
So this goes back to a whole bunch of different flooring products that we can look at. Typically, engineered flooring, like you can look up the specs for it, and they'll talk about what the maximum pressure that you can put on there before there's damage. So you take the overall weight of your tank, divide by how many feet, roughly. So if there's 4 feet, divide by 4,000 pounds. Divide by 4, that's 250, and then you take that and then you divide by your how many square inches, and so that gives you your pounds per square inch for our friends down in the States. But I use that up here in Canada too.
We use inches too. Someone already commented somewhere in there, but what, inches in Canada? Yes.
Yes, we use inches in Canada. We have to be bilingual because we live in Canada.
Makes sense.
Yep. Anyway, so you take that load and then you can figure out how much PSI is actually being applied. If you don't want to do math, you could just be safe. And there's actually a lot of products available on the market that you can get plastic discs that you can put underneath feet to help distribute load.
So you're just making the feet bigger. So
you're just adding more load.
Okay.
And you could also just take some lumps of plywood and just expand it. So then if there is any crushing failure, then the crushing failure happens in the plywood, and then potentially not as much crushing failure in your flooring product. But that being said, an engineered wood product will typically have a high capacity. So you're probably okay, but it's better to be safe than sorry, because I'm not going to be responsible if you crush your engineered wood product. Whereas if you have natural hardwood floors, and there's a huge variety in types of hardwood floors that you can have. Maple is quite soft and scratches and dents quite easily, whereas a cherry wood is really hard and won't scratch and dent as easily.
So like a maple, pine, softer woods, likely.
Well, pine is a softwood, so you wouldn't put that on the floor.
Hey, you never know.
That would be a really weird product. So yeah, maple is the softer side of the hardwood family.
Yep. Very, very true. Inches in Canada, no way. Adam, we're coming for maple syrup next. Okay, Peter... I just got to throw a tiny quick story. Peter from the Reef News Network, me and him were joking about that. He sent me this article about this like great maple syrup heist.
I was just about to say that, the great Canadian maple syrup heist. Like over in Quebec, they stole millions of gallons of maple syrup worth millions of dollars. Like,
I totally thought he was just joking. I didn't realize that was a real thing until I read the article after we were cracking jokes about it.
Of course, it happened over like a short period, or a long period of time. So it was like little bits of here and there, but maple syrup's like liquid gold. That stuff adds up. You sell it to someone else. It's really, I put it in my coffee.
You're a true Canadian.
Oh yeah, it's so good in your coffee.
I've done that in a latte, which was tasty. And steamed milk and a little syrup in there.
Well, it depends on the grade of maple syrup and the quality and all that other stuff.
Just total tangent, but Hannah makes little digital testers, like a little optical eye in it, the colorimeter, to test what primers are. And one is funny because they're like calcium, alkalinity, and they have one for maple syrup.
Nice.
Yeah, totally good. Okay, so Tom was saying, got mine on a second floor, load-bearing wall, 170 gallons.
So that's pretty similar size to the one that you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'd say you definitely need some professional expertise on that.
Now, I have heard people doing, 200 gallons plus, and some are saying it's fine without issues, but some of those issues could be long-term, right? Like it's long-term over time, stuff might start sagging, or you might have other issues.
Wood is prone to long-term effects, so you're not going to see it right away, such as creep. Wood is creepy. It creeps. So there's this thing with wood where you load it, it deflects, and it's not like a springboard. It doesn't just come back. It can deflect, and then if it's stuck in that position over time, it will stay there. So that saying where if you make that funny face, your face will get stuck that way.
It's legit for flooring.
It can actually happen to wood.
Good to know.
So, yeah, creep is a thing. And so if you stick the tank in the middle of your floor and it's saggy, hopefully it's not going to fall down. It'll just sag. And then when you take the tank away, then it'll stay sagged, and that will decrease the value of your house.
Makes sense.
Because someone's going to walk along the floor and be like, oh, there's something wrong with this house. It's crooked.
Yeah, perfect. Is a 75-gallon safe on a third floor?
So a 75-gallon... So this kind of goes back to how do we actually assess what type of tank should be okay without any sort of math or any sort of analysis. So it depends on how deep your tank is. So if you have a really deep tank or like something really, really tall and it's like concentrated into a small area, that's quite a bit more load per square foot.
A cylindrical 100-gallon tank versus a 4 or 5 foot long 100-gallon tank.
Yeah, so if you distribute the load, then you're probably fine. So we did a quick calculation before the channel, and it's about 8 inches gives you the same depth for residential loading.
So if you have a shallow frag tank, you're probably fine. If you have a couple foot deep tank,
it's
questionable.
I would say definitely call someone, call your local person to help you out, and they can help you out with that.
All right. Now, a lot of people, the safety zone for big tanks is if you're on a foundation or you have a concrete flooring in a basement. Is there ever any worry in there, or if you have concrete, you're good to go?
Concrete has a lot of capacity to it, especially if you're just on like the main floor. Stick it on there, not a big deal. You could stick 100 pounds per square foot on there, pretty easy. But what we calculated for yours was about 300 pounds per square foot.
Yeah.
So
a little higher.
It's still probably doable.
Okay. Okay, so he was saying 40 inches by 20 inches by 20 inches.
4 feet by 20 inches. So it's 20 feet in height. So that's...
Inches.
20 inches, yeah. That's why I always double check my units before I actually run through the calculations. So almost 2 feet. So that also depends on what the height of your tank is, because if it's actually 24 inches high and you accidentally overfill the tank and you leave it like that for a little while, well, now you have a 24-inch depth of water instead of the actual 20 or 22 inches, what it's supposed to be. But anyway, so we're going to go with your 20 inches in height times.
There you go, Tom. It depends on the house when it was made. Older houses are built more solid. Yes. I had an engineer check my floors and so I can go even bigger. There you go. You got an excuse to upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these newer houses, they're more engineered, not just sort of general rule of thumb. And so they take these engineered products and really push the limits for optimizing material. So this is... If this is the limit and this is, or you can't quite see my hand. If this is the limit and then they want to get as close to that limit as possible. But we got on a tangent. I'm trying to answer.
Okay, sorry.
20 inches.
Yes, reefing with hope.
Okay, now this is where my derpy thinking face comes in. So 20 inches will be about 100 pounds per square foot. A little bit less. but we're about 120 pounds per square foot for your distributed load. And in comparison to a regular floor loading for a house, we're only rated for 40 pounds per square foot. So we're going from 40 pounds all the way up to 120. That's 3 times than what the floor is potentially rated for.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to put it closer to a load-bearing wall, because you can go over closer
because
to a
you got
wall.
support right there versus the middle of a beam where it's sagging your potential.
Yeah,
Right?
like there's a lot of different factors to consider when I'm doing my analysis. Depending how long the spans are, there's different failure methods and different things that people think about when they're walking across a floor. The things that I look at is there's the vibration, like when you're walking across, does your house feel like a trampoline? Like trampolines are pretty strong, but that doesn't mean that you want to walk across
So
one
what
every
does it
day.
mean if there is vibration?
It just means that you can feel someone stomping around in the house.
Well, I know that, but like, what does it mean in terms of load bearing this? Does it mean it's weaker if it vibrates? Or
Well, it
does
depends
mean...
what the limiting factor is on that particular floor joist.
Okay.
So there's vibration. If you put load on there, that actually decreases the vibration.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if you put a fish tank, it will decrease your vibration and make your house more comfortable. So that's like one of those weird backwards things that could happen.
Yeah.
But that's if you stick the load right in the middle of the floor joist. But then that comes to deflection. So the sagging in your floor system. So if it deflects too much and then you get the creepy wood that likes to creep at you, then that's not good. Then the next kind of failure is when the wood actually starts cracking apart. And that's trouble. Yeah, so if you stick it in the middle of a floor system, then you get what's called bending failure, and then wood can start cracking apart, and that's not good.
Yeah.
And then the next kind of failure is shear failure. And again, wood cracking apart, that's when something just like shears right off.
You walk out, where'd you go? Where'd my tank go? It's in the basement?
Well, where does the whole floor go?
Yeah.
And the floor and your tank will be in your basement. So that's not good either.
No.
But that type of failure, it takes a lot to make that kind of thing happen. So that's usually not our failure method.
Yeah.
And then the next type of failure is wood crushing. So that's when you just take a chunk of wood and you can squish it, and then it just stays squished.
Yeah.
And that's probably not going to make something fall down, but it'll change the height of things. And so that kind of goes back to the deflection, and you'll probably see signs in your drywall.
Okay. So
cracks in
it
your
could
drywall
crack
kind of
it.
thing.
You can see sagging, stuff's just uneven. It's not square anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. Now, a lot of people live in condos. Now, I know we talked about concrete basements, but I know some condos have concrete floors between the units.
So condos are definitely the trickier part. And again, it goes back to how the floor systems are designed. So the floor systems are designed for your typical 40 pounds per square foot in your condo. Office floors are designed for 50 pounds per square foot.
Okay.
That's where I was thinking the 50 from.
Yep.
But then there's also reductions that happen, but that's only really in the columns. So the floors is one thing. And then again, you want to put the load closer to the floors, closer to the column or bearing wall.
Yep.
And what else could you do? That would be harder-ish to get an engineer just to come in and have a look at it, because you're talking about the whole overall system. Like, they could probably give you a couple of rules of thumb, help you find your columns if they're behind a door or behind a wall or just hidden somewhere.
This is going to be a very extreme example, but I saw a photo of one guy's tank. He was in a condo or an apartment, which amazed me, but it was like, I'm going to guess 500 gallons probably.
Oh, wow.
But it was on steel beams going out of the wall, and they had aircraft cables suspending the front of the tank, so the whole tank was floating, and he was like in an apartment building. It was crazy. It must have been like Penthouse built it in or something crazy. But
that's a pretty spiffy design.
It
is
awesome.
Still possible to get this kind of stuff to work with the concrete. It's just doing the analysis is more work for the structural engineer, because they also have to look at the building as a whole and make sure that other things aren't happening.
So your neighbor can't have a giant fish tank too?
Yeah.
Sure.
You have to share the fish tank
Nice, that's awesome.
usage.
Yeah. So no laminate floors. No, laminate floors are okay. It was more
Depends.
the feet and the points of distribution, right?
Laminate floors. Yeah. And it also depends on what kind of underlay you have. So if you have a soft underlay, then it's, again, more squishy, and then you get different types of failure actually happening in your laminate system.
Okay. That's good to know.
So if in doubt, just put some sort of distribution puck underneath there.
Bigger feet.
Just put some bigger feet underneath there.
Or if you do have adjustable feet, put a lot of them. So the more you have, the more distributed it is?
Yes.
Okay. Strength in numbers. Now, even despite... Okay, so it's always better, providing you're going across multiple joists. Longer is better, which is good because I love long, shallow tanks.
Yeah, you can just keep it nice and shallow. And then you can, like, torment the fish and stick your fingers in there.
No tormenting the fish.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. At least I'm recognizing that it's tormenting because I don't I'm not very good with keeping things alive. I had a goldfish once.
Yeah.
It lasted less than a week.
What?
I killed my goldfish.
What?
It was a present from someone. For whatever reason, they thought it was a good idea to...
Was it like an X or something? You're like, there goes the goldfish.
No, it was a prize from a party or something. My mom didn't want it, so she gave it to me. And then I stuck it in a cupboard, and then it died.
With a fish?
It was a hutch with a glass door. I'm not going to tell you.
Just all right, no salt water for you.
No, salt water is definitely for the guys that are ambitious and know what they're doing. I've heard that it's challenging.
It's not bad if you do it right.
Okay.
It's fun though. Okay, so we got, in general, exterior walls. I mean, it's a given.
Perpendicular floor
Perpendicular
joists.
to the floor joists. Is there... I know you can't say 100%, but in a general, you know, if someone has a 50-gallon tank and they put it anywhere, would that be fine? Like, I know it all depends on the shape, but in general, like, what's the point where you'd be like, okay, you should start looking into that?
Well, that's where it goes back to the depth of the tank. So I would say if you had one of those shallow tanks, you could probably stick it anywhere and you're fine. If you go deeper, if you wanted to go for a deeper tank, if you put it on a larger support system, you're probably fine. Once you go into like those deeper tanks, more than 8 inches, get someone to come and have a look at it. Like Devin and I are based out of BC, so I can help pretty much anywhere in BC.
Columbia, I might know a person.
Yeah. So I'm licensed to practice in British Columbia, so I can help anybody in British Columbia. Or if you want to fly me out to come visit, that's good too. Anywhere in BC.
Bribes of flights.
Yeah. But if you're anywhere else in the world, or I guess the rest of Canada, is just call your local structural engineer. But these are our tips and pointers for when you're planning, for where to put it, and then potentially there's less remediation work that actually has to happen. And then your engineer can just come and be like, yeah, you're good to go, you know, don't worry about it. And then you'll have someone that's licensed to practice.
Okay.
That actually says, yeah, you're good to go for your specific scenario.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, this is all general because every tank, every house is different. So it's hard to say 100%, right? But it kind of gets some general ideas. Okay, concrete floor, we can do whatever we want. We can go as crazy as we want.
In the basements.
In basement, within reason.
Yeah.
Second floor, many joists as possible. Exterior or low-bearing walls, could be center or exterior. Big thing. If you were... What's another good scenario? I don't know. Let me know if you guys got any specific scenario or questions.
That's pretty much it, is load-bearing walls, perpendicular.
Okay. Now, just for fun, because you sent me those drawings that we did about mine.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I was dealing with.
We did some calculations. So here's the normal loading. It's little. Here's your 40 pounds per square foot. And then we put Devin's fish tank on it. You can see how much different the loading is in comparison to what a floor joist is supposed to be designed for. So it's a big difference. So we stuck it near the end. So by sticking it near the end decreases different types of failures, but now it loads onto our mystery connection, which we found out was actually a header joist is what it's called. And so then we stick that onto our other analysis. Where did it go? The next one.
Okay.
And so here's the length of the fish tank, and then these are the extra supports that we put in, or that Devin ended up installing in his last video.
Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah.
I know.
So that's the little calculations that I did up.
Perfect. And now we're safe, and I have a happy wife that doesn't worry about fish tanks falling through the floor. Yeah.
Or just floors that are saggy and then crushing your drywall and then cracking drywall, and
that's true.
Again, happy wives.
Very true. So I definitely will throw this out. I actually had someone message me today asking me questions, and he's like, I'm not sure if I'm worried. He's like, but the girlfriend's on me. 100%. happy wife, happy life. And being like, yep, engineered, it's all good, goes a long way, especially if you're trying to sneak in that extra big tank, into the house. Help get those approvals from the significant other. Any other good tips? Any other good considerations? Covered all the bases?
Yeah, I think so. The big thing is, if you really have questions, definitely call your local structural person.
Okay. Excellent. And this might be different everywhere, but in general, what would it cost someone to go get it assessed or analyzed? Like, I know it's probably all over the place.
Yeah, it really depends on what kind of practice you're calling. And it depends if the engineer wants to come out and just do a quick consult or if they have to do more calculations. For example, I do consults locally for about $350, and then you get to pick my brain for 1 hour. And if I can write down information, that's what you get. If I have to actually do more of an analysis and a design, and I have to go back to the office, then I'll discuss what kind of fee structure that'll look like at that point.
Okay. So Kyle's asking, what would the limit be directly above a load-bearing wall, assuming a shallow tank? So if you're directly above a support wall.
And that depends, again, on what the spans are, if there's anything else that's contributing to the load-bearing wall. So on a typical span of, say, 15 foot for your wall. So I guess I do have to ask for you to clarify, what kind of limit are you looking for? Are you looking for a limit on length, width, depth? There's so many little variables before giving a definitive answer. Other than just saying, a shallow tank, you probably don't really have much of a limit. You could most likely fill up your entire floor system with a really shallow tank. Like if you went 6 inches over your entire floor system, you probably can't do much else on there, but you can have a lagoon, and you can have a little lagoon in your house.
Lawn chairs, put your feet in, watch the fishies swim
But then
around.
you can't go in the lagoon because that is in lieu of all of your live load, all the friends and stuff. So you can have a nice looky lagoon.
Yep. Okay, perfect. We'll have to talk. Kyle is actually locally, so he might be bugging you later to get some actual assessments.
I can certainly do that for you.
But I know he's looking to go bigger and do some kind of fancy custom stuff, so it'll be good. All right, guys, I think it'll be a bit of a shorter one today. I think we covered at least the general gist and basis of the common situations.
Yes.
Yep.
And
I do want to see a full lagoon one day if someone does it. I think that would be pretty amazing. Seriously, it would be.
Well, they have a name for that. Isn't that called a reflecting pool?
I don't know. I call it lagoon.
I think we do those sometimes for fancy swimming pools. There's the really shallow area, but that's more like the custom swimming pool.
Okay.
For just getting your feet wet. They're 6 inches deep or something silly like that.
Put one anywhere.
I definitely don't want to dive in there.
No?
No.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right, guys. Thanks for coming on today. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you do want to contact Meagan, if you're in BC anywhere, link in the description. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, and I'll see you guys.
Before we go, I have to show off how much of a geek I am.
You're a total geek.
I'm such a geek. Okay, so this is my shirt. I'm an engineer, and engineering, it's like math, but louder. Because I like mathing things, but just math is boring.
So true. It made me laugh, actually, when you were like, can I go do my numbers now? Can I do my math?
I just need to go. It's stop talking to me so I can math things, because I need to focus on mathing so I can give you a proper answer.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And then you can just stare at me while I make my derpy face, just thinking, staring off into space.
Processing, loading.
Yeah, just the loading bar across my forehead or something.
Yep. Be good. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you guys on next week's stream.